Hello, my name is Audrey Emran Beardsley. I'm a professor at Arizona State University, and I'm the very fortunate host of a show entitled Inside the Academy that is sponsored by the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College at Arizona State University. Today we're speaking with and in admiration of Dr. Courtney Cazden. It is a pleasure to honor you today.
Thank you for coming, Audrey. I really feel honored. But now that I know the category is Academy of Education, yes, I'm one of those.
You're one of our National Academy of Education honorees. So we're going to start with a little bit of history, and we'd like you to tell us a little bit about your time as a undergraduate student, as a college student.
Yes, I know that you would like to know more about my schooling before that, but it was so bits and pieces in various places, and I have so few memories of any of it until I get to the last 2 years of high school, which were up in Camden, Maine. And I last year went back to my 75th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
Of that high school class, and still have my best girlfriends are still both alive, and three of us went together. And I went from there to Radcliffe, which was then a quite separate women's part of Harvard. It had no faculty of its own. Harvard faculty would give a lecture to the young men, and then they'd walk across the Cambridge Common and give the same lecture to the young women. But my years in college were World War II years, 42 to 46. And there weren't so many young men still around going to college. So they started putting classes together, the advanced classes. That was the beginning. It took about 40 years to finish the job of putting the two, women and men, together totally.
Interesting.
Totally together. Probably the way they are at ASU, together in the dormitories, together in the bathrooms, together as well as in the classes. But the beginning was back in the World War II years when I was an undergraduate.
What did you study as an undergraduate
Well,
student?
I wandered around among the majors. First of all, thinking I wanted to go into medicine. So I took a biology course, and I really didn't like the lab work. So I decided that wasn't for me. And I finally ended up majoring in philosophy with no particular career goal in mind at all. But it's not a bad base for any kind of further study. And while I was there, I met Norman Cazden, and whom I later married as soon as I graduated. He was a doctoral student in musicology, and was not involved in World War II because he was exempt for medical reasons. And he told me about a children's camp up in upstate New York that he had been going to as a music counselor. and he thought I might like to go there one summer and see if I liked working with children. So the summer before I graduated, between my junior and senior year, he and I both went back to that camp called Camp Woodland in the upper part of the Catskills, near Woodstock, Vermont, Woodstock, New York, west of the Hudson. It's a part of New York State that is hiking, fishing, fly fishing on a nearby stream, and wonderful hiking, and it was a remarkable camp that we went to for 4 years, and then later in the 50s went back when we had 2 little children, and they really grew up there, and both learned to play the guitar and sing, and it was before the 60s. Our last summer there was actually 1960. So anyway, I decided that I really did like working with children. And the year after I graduated, Norman needed to be in New York to work in the New York Public Library to finish his doctoral thesis. And I went to the Bank Street College, what was then called Bank Street School for Teachers, I think was its name. It's now the Bank Street College of Education.
Okay.
And took a year-long course, including student teaching, and got the equivalent of a master's. They weren't accredited to give an actual master's degree, but it was counted as the equivalent of a master's. So the following year, I applied for a job in the New York City public schools, since Norman was still working on his doctoral thesis. And lo and behold, New York City at that time, as it still does, had a number of immigrant children.
Mm.
And so they were very strict about the English speaking, the speech of candidates for public school teachers.
Interesting.
And I flunked the speech exam, which has always seemed such a funny part of the story of my career, because I became so interested in, for reasons that had nothing to do with my speech impediment, which you may hear on this recording. I have a hissing S. So but I did teach in a couple of independent schools. And then we moved out to the Midwest. Norman was then had an academic job, and I, at the University of Illinois, and I went back, got a proper master's, and we had two children.
Did you end up teaching in Illinois then? Is that where you ended up being an elementary school teacher?
I was an elementary school teacher in 2 independent schools, and then later taught for 7 years in a public school, all elementary. In fact, all primary, first, second, third grade.
Okay.
In Connecticut.